In the final decade of the 8th century, Viking raiders attacked a series of Christian monasteries in the British Isles. From 865, the Viking attitude towards the British Isles changed, as they began to see it as a place for potential colonization rather than simply a place to raid. As a result of this, larger armies began arriving on Britain's shores, with the intention of conquering land and constructing settlements there. King Ethelred of Wessex, who had been leading the conflict against the Vikings, died in 871 and was succeeded on the throne of Wessex by his younger brother, Alfred. In the next 4 years, Vikings gained further land in the kingdoms of Mercia and East Anglia as well. Alfred regrouped his military forces and defeated the armies of the Viking monarch of East Anglia, Guthrum, at the Battle of Edington, May 878. Sometime after the Battle of Edington, a treaty was agreed that set out the lasting peace terms between the two kings that included the boundaries of each of their kingdoms. Alfred's policy of opposing the Viking settlers continued during the reign of King Edward the Elder, reigned 899 to 924. When Edward died in July 924, his son Athelstan became king. In 927, he conquered the last remaining Viking kingdom, York, making him the first Anglo-Saxon ruler of the whole of England. During the reign of Ethelred the Unready, the political strength of the English monarchy waned, and, in 980, raiders from Scandinavia resumed attacks against England. In 1013, Sweyn Forkbeard launched a full-scale invasion of England, after a few months of claiming submission over England and a successful attack on London. Ethelred fled to Normandy, leading Sweyn to take the English throne. Sweyn died 5 weeks later and Ethelred returned, driving out Sweyn's son. But, in 1015, Canute returned with a fleet of 200 ships, launching a hard-fought campaign that would last for over a year. After his victory over English forces at the Battle of Asandun, Canute and Edmund Ironside agreed to divide England between them, Canute the north and Edmund the south. Whoever outlived the other becomes king of all England. Canute was king of England upon Edmund's death on the 30th of November, and was crowned later in 1017, subsequently ruling over both the Danish and English kingdoms. Meanwhile, in 911, the Carolingian French ruler Charles the Simple allowed a group of Vikings under their leader Rollo to settle in Normandy as part of the Treaty of St. Clair-sur-Epte. In exchange for the land, the Norsemen under Rollo were expected to provide protection along the coast against further Viking invaders. Their settlement proved successful and the Vikings in the region became known as the Northmen, which Normandy and Normans are derived from. In 1002, English King Ethelred the Unready married Emma of Normandy, the sister of Richard II, Duke of Normandy. Their son Edward the Confessor, who spent many years in exile in Normandy, succeeded to the English throne in 1042. When King Edward died at the beginning of 1066, the lack of a clear heir led to a disputed succession in which several contenders laid claim to the throne of England. The main contenders were Harold Godwin's son, William, the Duke of Normandy, and Harold Hardrada, King of Norway. Hardrada claimed there was an agreement between his predecessor Magnus the Good and the earlier King of England Harthacnut, whereby, if either died without heir, the other would inherit both England and Norway. William claimed Edward had promised him the throne, and Harold had agreed to this when he was shipwrecked at Ponthieu in northern France. The Bayeux Tapestry, and other Norman sources, state that Harold swore an oath on sacred relics to William to support his claim to the English throne. Edward's immediate successor was the Earl of Wessex, Harold Godwin's son, the richest and most powerful of the English aristocrats. Harold was elected king by the Witenagemot of England and crowned by the Archbishop of York. In early 1066, Harold's exiled brother Tostig Godwin's son raided southeastern England with a fleet he had recruited in Flanders. Hardrada invaded northern England in early September, leading a fleet of more than 300 ships carrying perhaps 15,000 men. Hardrada's army was further augmented by the forces of Tostig. Advancing on York, the Norwegians occupied the city after defeating a northern English army under Edwin and Morcar on the 20th of September at the Battle of Fulford. Harold had spent mid-1066 on the south coast with a large army and fleet waiting for William to invade. The bulk of his forces were militia who needed to harvest their crops, so on the 8th of September, Harold dismissed the militia and the fleet. Learning of the Norwegian invasion, he rushed north, gathering forces as he went, and took the Norwegians by surprise, defeating them at the Battle of Stamford Bridge on the 25th of September. Harold, Hardrada, and Tostig were killed. William assembled a large invasion fleet and an army gathered from Normandy and the rest of France, including large contingents from Brittany and Flanders. He spent almost 9 months on his preparations, as he had to construct a fleet from nothing. The Normans crossed to England a few days after Harold's victory over the Norwegians, following the dispersal of Harold's naval force, and landed at Pevensey in Sussex on the 28th of September. A few ships were blown off course and landed at Romney. Harold, after defeating his brother Tostig and Harold Hardrada in the north, left much of his force there, including Morcar and Edwin, and marched the rest of his army south to deal with the threatened Norman invasion. The battle began at about 9 a.m. on the 14th of October, 1066, and lasted all day, but while a broad outline is known, the exact events are obscured by contradictory accounts in the sources. Although the numbers on each side were probably about equal, William had both cavalry and infantry, including many archers, while Harold had only foot soldiers and few archers. The English soldiers formed up as a shield wall along the ridge, and were at first so effective that William's army was thrown back with heavy casualties. Some of William's Breton troops panicked and fled, and some of the English troops appear to have pursued the fleeing Bretons. Norman cavalry then attacked and killed the pursuing troops. After his victory at Hastings, William expected to receive the submission of the surviving English leaders, but instead Edgar Atheling was proclaimed king by the Witenagemot, with the support of Earls Edwin and Morcar, Stigand, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and Ealdred, the Archbishop of York. William therefore advanced, marching around the coast of Kent to London. Having failed to muster an effective military response, Edgar's leading supporters lost their nerve, and the English leaders surrendered to William at Berkhamsted, Hertfordshire. William was acclaimed King of England and crowned by Ealdred on the 25th of December, 1066, in Westminster Abbey.